do our teams here in town need to do more to close the gap, at least on paper? And if I'm looking at the Mets specifically, because I think the Yankees have, look, they were in the World Series last year. They made a lot of moves, even with losing Juan Soto. I think the Mets do have to do more. You don't want to react to what other teams do. However, in this spot, to get on par with the LA Dodgers, I do think the Mets need to react and make sure that they go big. And they got Juan Soto. They still need more.
But listen, I know that both teams do need more. I agree. And I also agree that the Mets need more than the Yankees at this point. I do think the Yankees need to determine, is Jazz, hey, said it right. And I didn't give you a chance. Is Jazz, nice. Yeah. So I'm thinking about it. It came out properly. Is Jazz playing third or is he playing second? Once they resolve that, I think for the most part, provided they're healthy, everything will fall into line for the Yankees in a weaker American League, and then you see what happens in October. The Mets now, they need protection for Soto. They absolutely have to get that. But when I look at the Dodgers, who are a model of surplus at this point, I really think the dumbest thing for the Yanks and the Mets would be to try to match it to, number one, pacify fans, or in their own minds, just kind of hang with the big boys. I don't think there's a move that can happen the rest of this winter. I know that there's not. The rest of this winter that's going to elevate them perception-wise on the same line as the Dodgers, even if they got Bregman and even if they would have gotten Santander a couple of days ago. I think when you start chasing teams rather than sticking to your model, I think that's when you get in trouble.
I think it's a sound philosophy, and I'm not surprised to hear you say that because that's consistent with the way that you would believe in football. We talked about that with the Giants or whatever, and I kind of fundamentally agree. However, BT, it is more than just trying to get the results on the field. Like last year's Mets offseason wasn't very good, and we accepted that at the time. I shouldn't say it wasn't very good. It wasn't exciting.
Yeah,
and
true.
I accepted it at the time.
Turned out pretty good. It just wasn't.
Well, right. It wasn't very exciting. So it doesn't always mean you win making these big moves, which is why I don't think the Dodgers are going to be as great as everybody thinks. Now, they were World Series champions. They added to it. Ohtani's coming back healthy as far as the pitcher goes. So you look at it and say, well, how the hell are they going to be beat? Hey, this is sports. Things do happen. But there is something to be said about Steve Cohen in particular, who talks about the Dodgers being the model, and him now getting the one mega superstar on Juan Soto, but trying to compete with the team that has 4 or 5, 6 of them. And you look at their rotation, I just don't know how. You saw the disparity firsthand. Again, forget about the Yankees for a second, because I don't think the disparity was as great with the Yankees as it was with the Mets. Mm-hmm. You saw the disparity firsthand, where I think even if everything went right for the Mets last year in the NLCS, they still weren't as good as the Los Angeles Dodgers. They got clobbered in that series, even with winning the 2 games. So the Mets have a long ways to go to close that gap, and the more the Dodgers add, you're not necessarily doing it in response to what they're doing, but you're doing it to try to close the gap going in anyway. I want more for the Mets anyway.
Well, yeah, I get it. I mean, it's going to get you jacked up and juiced up in January and leading into February and March down in Port St. Lucie and Tampa. There's also this thing called the trade deadline, and I know that that's not as sexy today. I get it, but in a lot of ways it's more effective because you know exactly what you need to address based on a lack of production, injuries, or both. The thing about the Dodgers, and everybody is talking about the money that they're spending, which obviously is front and center, and it's kind of not cheating, but maybe circumventing some things on the up and up with the deferred money, blah, blah. Okay. Until baseball changes its rules, Dodgers really aren't doing literally anything legally wrong pertaining to the CBA or any of those other issues that teams abide by. But what they have to be lauded for, and if there was an opportunity now, I would say that the Mets or the Yankees should do this. But why the Dodgers were so forward-thinking and so smart, forget about the pitchers, when they got Mookie Betts, he was in his absolute prime. When they got Ohtani, he was in his absolute prime. And when they got Freddie Freeman and they signed him for the Braves, he was still in the middle. Maybe not at the beginning stage of his but certainly in the middle of his absolute prime. And I look at guys like Santander, look at guys like Bregman, I look at guys like Pete, who's their own. Those guys, they might be in there. I don't think Bregman's in his absolute prime. Maybe Santander is. I don't think Pete is. He's kind of close to middle forward. But their prime's not good enough, not dynamic enough to justify going for those kind of guys. Because in your mind, you think you're keeping up with the Dodgers, but you're just spending money and bringing in inferior players.
Well, let me give you an example. Tanner Scott. Like the Mets, okay, they're pivoting from Pete. In their minds, they think Pete is going to sign elsewhere. So what do? Jesse Winker. Okay, whatever.
$8 million bucks. He's fine.
Like here's what Jesse Winker is. He's better than Daniel Vogelback or better than JD Martinez. But He's Jesse Winker. Okay. And then they get A.J. Minter, right? Good reliever. Love the signing.
Solid.
Why couldn't they go get Tanner Scott in addition? Like, the Mets are operating with Steve Cohen, and I'm not trying to call out Steve Cohen because I think he's done a great job, and I understand that you don't need to spend $400 billion to build a winning team. But if the Dodgers can go add guys on top of guys, like extending for Blake Snell and bringing him in, the Glasnow trade, whatever, and then signing him up, and I think you have to almost take out Yamamoto, Ohtani, and Sasaki because the Mets and Yankees both tried to get those guys. They just couldn't because they wanted to go to the Dodgers. But Tanner Scott could have been had by the Mets or the Yankees. And let's just focus on the Mets for a second. If the Mets went out there and got Minter and Tanner Scott, we'd be feeling pretty good about their bullpen. Instead, the Dodgers go pay him the 4 years, whatever it was that he got. So there are moves that could be made. And Walker Buehler, like the Mets could have added another starting pitcher. Now you're saying, okay, well, is he that surefire bet? No, maybe not, but they're thin in the rotation. They're thin in the bullpen. They're thinner in the lineup. There were moves that they could be made outside of the ones that they couldn't get, like the Japanese players. Why are the Dodgers making those moves, but the Mets can't?
I don't have an absolute answer for you, but I do know this. Remember, I just talked about the primes and the absolute primes and how the Dodgers were ahead of it getting those guys. Okay. To me, there's only, at least for public knowledge, one player right now in baseball who is in his, I think he's just entering his absolute prime, and the Mets, and we think he's available, and the Mets are in the middle of everything. That's Vlad.
Right.
So that is in line with what the Dodgers were doing with Mookie Betts when they got him at the age. Now, that's number one.
By the way, I think the Mets, sorry to cut you off there, BT, but if Steve Cohen was the owner at the time, they would have been in on Mookie Betts. Doesn't mean they would have gotten him,
I agree.
but they would have been in on Mookie Betts. Maybe not the Yankees because of the Red Sox thing, but
I agree with that. I think that's fair. I think that there's enough evidence that Steve Cohen's going to be on anybody that he think is ascending and a true organizational difference maker, no matter what the price tag is.
Or they wouldn't have let Zach Wheeler go. Like, those are two moves.
That's an old one, but probably right. I agree.
He's still dominant right now.
He's very good.
So he would have been in their rotation theoretically. Anyway.
The other thing, though, this is important, too, and I know it's not as fun, even though some people love digging in the weeds here, but most people don't really. First of all, nobody truly knows because, and you'll see where I'm going, they're still unproven commodities, but I think you have to factor this in. Every decision the Mets make or don't make on some level is also correlating to what they believe that they have in the minor league system. I'm telling you, I get it. It's not exciting in January when it's 9 degrees outside and you have the Dodgers with basically 13 All-Stars. I get it. I agree. I understand. Yes. But part of that sustainability, and that is the word that you and Evan and all these great Met fans have used forever. What you guys are chasing is every year when you go down to camp in the middle of February, you're on the short list to win the World Series. Not for 1 year, but, a run of 5 or 6 years. Like the Yankees are there. Like the Dodgers are obviously there, even more than the Yankees, clearly, because they beat them. So I just think it's kind of a tsunami of things almost working against the Mets right now. Not forever, but right now. There's not a lot of in the prime. You want to tell me maybe you could lure Tatis away from the Padres? All right, maybe have that conversation. He's in his prime. But there's not many in the prime guys that they can get right now. They might get Vlad. They're trying. And also, they really like their minor league system. That's something David Stearns is very good at. You got to let him cook.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. But the minor league system, you got to wait for that and then see who's going to develop. And a lot of these guys aren't even his. They were Epler's picks. But to your point, whether it's Vlad, whether it's Tucker, whatever it may be,
Tucker,
the Yankees tried. Both the Mets and the Yankees on paper. Let's say the Yankees get to the World Series, take on the Dodgers. Doesn't mean they can't win. We've seen upsets happen in sports all the time.
They'd be massive underdogs.
Okay.
They would absolutely. People would think they would get crushed.
And that's kind of the point. Like going in, the Dodgers have started to pull away from the field, even though the Mets and Yankees are in the conversation for a handful of teams that can legitimately compete for a World Series. The Dodgers just keep piling on and piling on. And we're New York. Like, the Yankees shouldn't be taking a backseat to anybody, and Steve Cohen and the Mets shouldn't be taking a backseat to anybody. That's what we talked about going head-to-head. And instead of going head-to-head, now it should be the bullseye on the Dodgers. But the Yankees are potentially going into the season with DJ LeMahieu as their third baseman.
Listen, and that's going to really draw my ire. I just don't. I can't choose to believe that that's going to happen on opening day. If it does, you'll get my reaction clearly here on WFAN. I also think that when you look, I know the game's changed a lot, and we use the term kind of like the NCAA tournament, one game, even though baseball's not one game. There's a randomness to it because it's cyclical, the rate of failure. Aaron Judge, MVP, basically 1 for 20 every series. It seemed with a bunch of whiffs. Okay, but Go back, it's a while ago, and it just passed, right? So it's kind of timely. Go back to that amazing A's team. Number one, they were all hopped up on steroids.
Yeah.
They had Eckersley, they had Stewart, they had Mark McGuire, they had Jose Canseco, they had Ricky, they got swept by the Reds.
Yeah,
Who the Reds have? Eric Davis and Chris Sabo?
Right.
Who the hell was on that team?
Jose Rio. I know, I get it.
You know what I'm saying? So I get it. Yes, it fits the narrative today in January. It's a long season, and both teams are going to make more moves.
I know it may not be the smartest thing, but I do feel like there's got to be some kind of reaction.
So it's more of an emotional thing rather than maybe pragmatic?
Well, I think both. I think the Mets need it more anyway. But seeing them sit there and just saying, yeah, we're going to be practical about things and wait and be patient, and then seeing the Dodgers make moves on top of moves, like, come on, we thought we're closing the gap here, and they just keep going.
They keep adding to their war chest. Listen, I do have to be fair to this, though, and be fair to the Yankees. Like, if it's DJ, we got a problem. They need to resolve the second, third base, but... And I love the pivot. They brought in a great closer. They brought in a center fielder who could play first, who could run and hit bombs, and a lefty, which is what they need. They brought in a first baseman who at the very least going to be functional, better than Rizzo. I think the Yankees are going to win a lot of games this year. I will say, though, once the Mets got Juan Soto, I thought there were multiple big moves coming since. I am very surprised it's been this quiet from the Mets' perspective.
BT and Sal on the Fan, 888-808-1019, the number to call. Fred's at Town Fair Tire. Remind you that at Town Fair Tire, you always get the guaranteed lowest price on name brand tires from Connecticut to Maine. Nobody beats Town Fair Tire. Nobody. Charlie is in Bethpage. What's up, Charlie?
Hi, BT and Sal. How are you, boys?
Good, Charlie. What's up?
What's up, man?
You know what? I love you guys. You guys are my sports therapists, and I need to hear it being a Met and Jet fan. You saved me a lot of moments in not going to a therapist and paying co-payments. But I'm just saying, we went over this when we signed Soto, and I called in that day. I went on the King Soto, Santa Soto thing, and I said the job's not done. And Sal, you hit that red button so quick and told me enjoy the moment. Well, I did enjoy the moment. That moment passed. And all we've done since then is Benaya. And that's not good enough. I wanted Freed. I wanted Burns. I wanted Bueller. I needed another arm. You know what? How about the son, Pete Alonso, start something here and get me some more players on our roster? Because one guy's not going to do it. The Yankees couldn't do it with Soto and Judge. And now we're going against the evil empire in the West Coast. And we're not given a chance here if we don't do anything.
That's kind of my point, Charlie. And thank you for the call. And we do appreciate the kind words.
He's more with you.
Yeah, it's not. But I'm not like he was saying that right after Soto. And I'm saying take a deep breath here.
I remember what he called.
And I think the Mets have had a sound offseason. They got the big fish in Soto, so it's fine from there. But I wanted more in the starting rotation, and then they needed to build out a bullpen. And A.J. Minter's a nice addition, but why couldn't it be Minter and Tanner Scott? Why can't it be? And by the way, I was under the assumption that they were going to bring Pete back. Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't going to be Pete, well, then they were going to bring somebody else in. Mm-hmm. So right now we're operating where the Mets didn't do as much as I thought they would in the starting rotation. They didn't really do much in the bullpen, and they didn't do much in the lineup with losing Alonso. Like, at least if you brought back Alonso, it'd be okay, well, Soto, Alonso. And I'm fine with not Pete, but then who's replacing him? Like, the Mets basically, they incremental upgrades, right? Even with Soto. I love the superstar move. They're better now than they were last year, but if it's a mild upgrade.
I know what you mean.
And the Dodgers won the World Series and they've upgraded. The gap still remains the same, if not wider.
Yeah, but even if Pete was already signed, the gap would still be massive.
Yeah.
So where do you go from there?
Pete back?
Yeah, let's say they announced tonight Pete's coming back on a 1-year, $33 million deal. Prove it, go back out to free agency next year. Yeah, you've got the bigger stick behind Soto for protection, which I know that's something they really need. I said that 10 minutes ago. I'm surprised that hasn't been addressed yet. But, I mean, does that, significantly change the pecking? No, I mean the Dodgers are still looking down at everybody, including the Yankees in the American League.
Well, that's what I mean. But don't you think then these teams need to do a little bit more? It's not just reacting.
I know. It's not just scratching that emotional itch. I want more. I know. But if the Mets, and I know the word analytics gets a lot of people to cringe. If the analytics of the Mets, and let's face it, Stearns has earned the benefit of the doubt. He's been here 1 year. Look what happened last year. I don't have to remind you, Met fans, that basically everything he touched worked out well. And the things he did touch, what was the third baseman that they got early on that didn't work out?
Joey Wendell?
Joey Wendell, former Tampa Bay Ray, that they got rid of. They signed him for $2 million. They gave it a shot. Didn't work. Get lost. You're not good enough. So I think everything they did worked out. The things that they did that didn't work out, they made those go away very quickly. But I just think that you have to understand that Stearns, while it's going to be supported with more money because he's here, not in Milwaukee, his blueprint is not to just go out there like a drunken sailor and do damage. And if Met fans are waiting for that, that's not coming.
Right, and you're right about the analytics. Like, they project, let's say this year, their projections are saying they're a 90, 91 win team. Last year it was 85 wins, whatever it was, and they may exceeded that by a little bit. Okay, so our projections say we're 90, 91 wins. With Pete Alonso, we're 92, whatever it may be.
Yep.
And they're thinking it's not worth this much money. That's fine. But then if you get your asses handed to you again by the Dodgers in the postseason, and we felt that last year, similar to the Knicks, BT, where a year ago, the Knicks, and we'll get more into them, but, the Knicks maxed out, it felt like, especially with the injuries. They maxed out. They needed more talent to legitimately compete for an NBA championship. Yep. The Mets need more based on what else is going on. Maybe the Yankees don't because of the American League.
Yeah.
And then once they get there, there'll be a little rude awakening, but the Mets need more going in to legitimately compete with a team like the Dodgers on paper.
See, I hate to throw a curve here because it's almost burying the lead, but the more I think about this, really, and I understand the Dodgers' energy, I truly do. I think the better point might be, the Mets have to do more to compete with the Braves and the Phillies. Yeah. Forget about the Dodgers right now.
That is true. Ray's in Waterbury, Connecticut. What's up, Ray?
Ray.
Hi, guys. Great monologue. You know what? Both you guys are absolutely right. The Mets need a bat. Whether it's Pete, they need a bat. They can't be. I don't want to hear. This isn't last year. We're in a transition year. I don't want to hear. Let's see what the young guys could do. That was for last year. The bottom line is, we need a bat. Whether it's Profar, somebody, And the bottom line is, I think we're an arm short in the rotation and a bat short. I mean, the bottom line is, don't spend the money.
Can I ask you a quick question? Because I don't want to lose this point. I get this, and he wasn't even on the opening day roster, so maybe they kind of backdoored this and stumbled into it. So when you say the young players to development, that was for a year ago. Well, what if one of the, and I don't think it's going to be Beatty, but what if it's Beatty or Mauricio? What if they replicate what the Vientos did a year ago? Now you got two kids who are in their early 20s who were studs.
Right, but but that's you're right, JT. But the bottom line is, get rid of Marte. He shouldn't be on this roster.
I agree with that. Get rid of him. He stinks.
Yeah,
He's dead right at this point.
They're trying, and they have tried to trade him, and thank you for the call, Ray. See, there is a difference between reacting to what another team is doing and building your team to the best of its capabilities going in.
Well said. I agree with that.
I don't believe, prior to these extra Dodger moves, I don't believe the Mets built their team, nor did the Yankees, and we can get to them when we come back just to add on to it a little bit.
Yep.
Nor did the Yankees the Mets and Yankees did not build their team to the best of their capabilities going in. And then you have the Dodgers, Lance Sasaki, maybe not a surprise to some. I thought he was going to go to the Padres, but whatever. Then you have them add Tanner Scott. Like, they just keep adding to this team. They add Kirby Yates. Like, the Dodgers are getting a lot of the guys that you would think the Mets would need for their bullpen. Yankees already have a beefed up bullpen, but you get the point. So I don't think, it's separate from what the Dodgers have done, which is just pile on to the already best team in baseball, I don't think the Mets and Yankees did enough anyway.
Okay, I think what's really happened here, and one of our last callers, our first call of the day, is Charlie. He said it. The Juan Soto juice and that residue from that excitement, that is expired. Like, and that's not being greedy. That's being realistic. Like the Mets, and we'll incorporate the Yankees more next.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Yanks need a little tweak. Like the Mets need more, I think, just to be a playoff team. Now, not everybody's going to agree with that statement, but I think where we are now is that 1 month joyride of exultation with Soto, it's evaporated a little bit. And the Mets got to do something else here.
BT and Sal on the Fan. Continuing with your calls, we'll get to the Aaron Glenn update. He did, in fact, leave the building. We'll do that in the course of the next 40 minutes or so. Stay with us, 888-808-1019. Just getting started on this Wednesday morning. BT and Sal on the Fan.